Chapter 6. The Goddess. Why does the God lover find such pleasure in addressing the deity as mother? Because the child is more free with the mother, and consequently she is dearer to the child than anyone else. Ramakrishna, 19th century. In the sacred lore of the Aryan herds people who colonized the Indus Valley, female divinities play nearly as insignificant a role as in the sacred writings of the Hebrews. Pastoralists, the anthropologists have found, live in a patriarchal universe. In the course of time, however, all the Vedic gods find themselves married to illustrious goddesses and, finally, with the rise of the Bengali mother cult and Shakti cult, the goddess becomes equated with the entire universe. She becomes the personification of Maya, the illusion of an infinite multitude of separate existences, forms, and names, and of Kala, the illusion of the coming and going of time. She is worshipped as the energy Shakti that sets everything in motion, sustains it, and lets it dissolve. Be in all this, Shiva is only consciousness. He is the self, while she is his being, which he contemplates in his meditation. He is the resting pole around which she dances her seductive dances. Her infinite number of masks and veils that simultaneously reveal and conceal, totally fascinate and spellbind the observer, plunging him into a kaleidoscope of sublime beauty, abysmal horror, unfathomable sadness, or peaceful gladness. Shiva appearing in his female form as Maheshwari. Since Shiva is only the silent, immobile witness, whereas she is the power herself, the devotees of Shakti and Devi have concluded that it might be best to direct one's attention and prayers exclusively to the goddess. Not the distant father, but she, the mother of all, protects her children and fulfills their wishes. Periodically, Christians have followed a similar mode of thought, turning foremost to Mary the Virgin, who bore God and who is the mother of the universe. Indian monism demands that there be only one ultimate reality. Therefore, Shiva and the goddess are not really two, but one. He is the center of being and she is the energy radiating from it. They cannot be separated, yet her elusive forms and expressions are without number. Consequently, the universe is filled with more gods and realities than there are grains of sand on the seashore. At the same time, the one which is many is threefold, expressing itself in the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva Rudra. How Shakti arose from the triune Godhead is told in the Varaha Purana. Once, the creator, the upholder, and the destroyer met on Mount Kailash. They were heated with anger at the uppity demons that plagued them like lice in the hair. As their angry glances met, a column of smoke rose in the focal point and in its midst stood a most beautiful maiden, as fresh as a blue lotus bud opening to the gentle, warm caress of the morning sun. Shyly she bowed her comely head before them. When the perplexed gods asked who she might be and why her color was white, red, and black, the radiant woman replied, "Don't you know me, noble lords? I am the concentration of your energies. I am your Shakti." All three wanted to possess her. Brahma, who overcame his confusion first, commanded her to divide into three parts according to her colors. Thus, the three great goddesses came into being: Snow White Saraswati, whom Brahma took as his wife, Lakshmi, who is of auspicious red color and was taken by Vishnu, and Parvati, the black goddess, whom Shiva chose as his companion. The three goddesses who appear in this image are, of course, the three primal elements gunas that make up the creation: the light, sattva, the active, rajas, and the dark, dull, tamas. They are the primordial mothers, the thrice dynamic matter, out of which the world of appearance existence is woven. In principle, they are the same three ancient mothers that spin out the fate of the world in Celtic, Germanic, and other Indo-European mythologies. See Saraswati. Saraswati, the white goddess who rides a swan, is a river goddess who inspires the flow of thoughts, words, and imaginings of poets, thinkers, and speakers. As the muse of artists and healers, she is shown holding a lute, veena, a rosary, and a book. Her relationship to other Indo-European white goddesses and swan maidens, who can foretell the future and heal the ailing, is unmistakable. The Celts knew her as Bridget or Birgit, or simply as the white goddess. Shiva and Parvati. Lakshmi, the red-complexioned, faithful wife of Vishnu, who tenderly massages his feet as he awakens from his sleep on the world's serpent, Sesha, is the personification of good fortune, or luck. She is the Fortuna, whose cornucopia pours out the riches for which every merchant and householder prays. As we have seen elsewhere, she appeared during the churning of the ocean and is, like the Greek Aphrodite, the foam-born goddess of beauty as well. Like the Greek Athena, her animal companion is the owl. As happens with beautiful women all too often, the white and the red goddesses are jealous of each other and refuse to live under the same roof. Thus the artist or poet who loves the muse, Saraswati, might draw the ire of Lakshmi and will often have to go without material wealth. On the other hand, the successful business person might swim in money but will have little time or attention from the muse. Rare is the blessed soul who has the favor of both goddesses. But now we shall turn to the black goddess, who became Shiva's bride. Many more stories are told of her, for she is the goddess. Devi. We have already gotten to know Devi, the radiant one, or simply, the goddess, as the self-immolated daughter of righteous Daksha. According to the Kalika Purana, she always was, and always is, the other half of Shiva. 1 The story tells of a grumpy grandfather Brahma, who was very upset when he discovered that his mind-born sons had no intention of being fruitful, multiplying, and thus populating the earth. As his angry thoughts concentrated, they took on the form of a hermaphroditic being, which he commanded to split into two. The masculine half he called Rudra, and the feminine half, Sati Uma. The Creator gave Sati to his foremost son Daksha to be born as his youngest daughter, whom Shiva was destined to wed. After Sati had entered the flames and removed herself from existence, Rudra's power and glory waned until he was no better than a mangy dog. It is obvious that no god can be without his female half, his Shakti. In the Vavarta Purana, Shiva, maddened by the pain of separation, admits this when he cries of Uma's loss. Icon of Uma Mahashwara. Arise, arise, my beloved Sati. I am Shankara, your Lord. With you I am Almighty, the foundation of all, the giver of all bliss. But without you, my animation, I am but a corpse, powerless and unable to act. Let your smiles and glances, let your words, sweet as ambrosia, rain upon my pain-scorched heart. Why, O mistress of my soul, will you not speak to me? Mother of the universe, do you not see me weeping? Why are you disobedient to me? Why have you forgotten your marriage vow? After having thus lamented, he lost his senses completely. He even forgot who he was. Exhausted by fatigue and anguish, he collapsed at the foot of a peepal fig tree. Vishnu, who found him in the forlorn state, started to cry bitter tears of compassion as he tried to console him. Oh, Shiva, Shiva, come to. You will find your Sati again, for you and she are inseparable like fire and heat, like snow and cold, like sun and light. Shiva managed to open his tear-swollen eyes. Who are you, you light of splendor? Are you God? Where am I? Who am I? Was all he managed to utter before sinking into darkness. The tears that both shed filled a lake that is, to this day, a place of pilgrimage. As Shiva's despair reached the limit of what was bearable, Sati's voice was suddenly heard from the heavens, saying, "Be strong, O Mahadeva, Lord of my soul. Wherever I may be, I am never really separated from you. Soon I shall be reborn as the daughter of the mountains, and again I shall be your wife. Grieve no longer." Indeed, in due time, what the voice had foretold came to pass. The king of the mountains, Himalaya, and his wife, Meena, whom Swamis take as a personification of the ether, or Akasha, had two daughters. The elder one they named Ganga, and the younger one, who had been Uma Sati in her former life, they called Parvati. We shall soon see how she conquered the heart of the ascetic meditant, Shankar, and how she became the mother of the demon killer, Skanda. Shiva and Parvati often wander unrecognized, as beggars, throughout the world, testing the souls of people. Most of the time, however, they live in a simple abode on Mount Kailash, where Shiva loafs around while Parvati busies herself with household chores, like any good Hindu mother. But it is not just endless matrimonial bliss. Quarrels, fights, and then tearful making up are as common with them as with most married couples. Many husbands like to read interesting excerpts from the Sunday newspapers to their wives. In the following Keralese folktale, Shiva is no exception. He loves to read and explain the Vedas to Parvati. Parvati enjoys this, but, as with most women, her mind sometimes drifts to more immediate concerns. Once, having read the Vedas out loud for several hundred years, Shiva glanced up and happened to notice that Parvati was not listening. Being more than annoyed, he lashed out at her. "I see that the Vedas are too difficult for you. You should have married a rude, illiterate fisherman. That would have been more your level of intelligence." At that very moment, Parvati disappeared from Mount Kailash and reappeared as a squalling infant under a tree, somewhere near the South Indian seashore. Just then, a group of simple fishermen happened to walk by and find her. The chief of the fishermen took the baby home and put it in his wife's arms. They decided to call her Parvati and raise her as their own daughter. Being cared for tenderly, she grew up as the prettiest child in the little thatch village. In the meantime, Shiva was as miserable as a dog in the pre-monsoon heat. He was sorry to have scolded her and felt depressed and alone. His faithful bull, Nandi, not able to bear his master's decline of spirits, proposed, "Dear Lord, why don't you just go down there and fetch her again? How would that be possible? She is about to be married off to one of these fishermen." Shiva replied in a voice that betrayed immeasurable self-pity. Suddenly Nandi had a flash. He jumped down into the sea, turning himself into a huge white shark, and started to terrorize the coast by attacking the boats and ripping up the fishing nets. The fishermen held an emergency council, trying to find a way to get rid of the menace. Finally, the chief of the tribe rose and spoke. "Any young man who manages to kill this shark shall have my daughter as his wife." Since Parvati's grace, beauty, and industry were unequaled, young fishermen from far and near were eager to risk life and limb in order to have her. But none of them were able to catch the white sea monster. At long last, with all their reserves exhausted, they decided to ask for God's help. They formed a large lingam out of wet sand, decorated it with flowers, and poured milk and coconut juice on it while they prayed to Mahadev. The chief's pretty daughter prayed as fervently as any of them. Shiva heard their prayer. Slipping into the appearance of a black-skinned youth from a faraway village, he walked in upon the scene. Overjoyed that his plan had worked, Nandi let himself be easily caught and killed by the youth. After the white killer shark was dead, the marriage feast was celebrated. During the sacred rites, the couple took on their radiant divine forms. They blessed the astonished, simple fishing folk, climbed on Nandi, who had changed back into his bovine form, and departed for the northern mountains. Often the divine couple plays dice as a pleasant pastime. Shiva wagered his trident, Parvati wagered her jewels. One time he had a bad streak of luck. He lost not only his weapon, but his snake, his skull bowl, his drum, his smoking pipe, and finally even his loincloth. Peeved, he went alone into the pine forest. There he met Vishnu, who felt sorry for him. Play another game, his friend advised him. I will slip into the die. Not only did he win all his belongings back, but he won Parvati's jewels, and even her shawl. As she stood there, shivering in the cold mountain air, she became suspicious and called him a cheat. Shiva was outraged by her accusation and demanded an apology. As they quarreled, Vishnu appeared and revealed to Parvati the secret of Shiva's gambling luck. In order to pacify her, he explained, the dice rolled not according to your wishes, but according to my wish, for my spirit had entered them. So neither one of you really won or lost. The game was an illusion and your quarrel a product of delusion. On hearing this, Parvati and Shiva realized that life was like their game of dice. That was not the first time they quarreled over a game of dice. Once, as they were rolling the dice, they got into a heated argument, for they had forgotten to keep track of their scores. Shiva was sure that he had won, but Parvati insisted that she had the higher score. In order to cool his temper, Shiva left the house and took a walk in the forest. The sage Narada, who loves stirring up trouble among the gods, could not help but notice the bickering and decided to spice it up somewhat. In his honey-sweet voice, he told Parvati that he had just seen Shiva as a handsome young Bhil tribesman, roaming the forest and looking for one of those affectionate, seductive native women. At the very thought, Parvati's blood boiled, for she was as jealous as she was beautiful. Instantly, she herself took on the form of a sexy young Bhil maiden and went walking in the same forest. The heavy silver rings around her arms and legs shone like moonlight on her smooth, black skin. Colorful feathers of forest birds were woven into her full black hair, and her slender body swayed to her singing like a bamboo reed in the wind. Kamar's flowery arrows hit the bullseye of Shiva's heart when he saw her. Instantly he turned himself into a Bhil forester and stepped up to her. He became mere putty in the forest girl's hand. Oh, most beautiful maiden, marry me on the spot, he said. The almond-eyed native girl smiled teasingly. But, sir, you already have two queens, Ganga, who lives in your hair, and faithful Parvati at home. Don't let that bother you, my little forest flower. I shall send Parvati back to her parents and make Ganga your maidservant. But, retorted the Bhil maiden, you are so ugly with your matted, unkempt yellow hair, your horrid snakes and ashes. Anyway, your home is but a lean-to and you carry a beggar's staff. Darling, I will get a haircut, shave, and shower. I'll chase the vipers off and throw the stick away. I will build you a palace of jewels, ivory, and gold. Well, all right, she smiled, flashing her perfectly white teeth, but it is the custom of our tribe that in order to woo a maiden, the suitor has to dance a dance to win her heart. Nothing was easier for Nataraj. On the spot, he started dancing like crazy. He was sure she would be impressed. But just as he went to grab her hand, he saw Parvati standing in front of him and froze in shame. Another time, as Parvati tenderly wrapped her arms around Shiva's neck, he commented, in his way, sweetheart, your supple body is like a black snake wrapping itself around the white trunk of a sandalwood tree. I am pale white, but you are as black as the dark half of the moon. You are Kali, the black one, black as coal, black as a crow. Parvati took these intended compliments in the wrong way and her feelings were very hurt. As tears rolled like pearls down her cheeks, she sobbed, "How can you insult me so meanly, calling me black? As if you have no faults of your own. But have I ever even hinted at them? The whole world knows your choleric temperament, how you knocked out poor Pushan's teeth. You monster! And your creepy companions, your snakes and skulls. How you run around shamelessly naked." She worked herself into a real rage. No, but, darling, could bring her out of it. Finally, Parvati convinced herself that she should leave him. She made up her mind to go into the wilderness and do penance until Brahma would be forced to grant her wish for a lighter skin color. As she turned her back on Mount Kailash, all the ghosts and goblins and everyone, including Nandi and Ganesha, ran after her, crying, "Mother, dear mother! Where are you going? Don't leave us. You know that when you are not here we can barely stand Shiva's moods. Don't worry, my little darlings. When your mommy has finished her austerities and her skin has turned light, then she'll be back," she said to calm them, and then, turning to Nandi, she said, "You, my son, are the gatekeeper. Guard the door until I come back. Don't let any strange woman enter, so that this lecherous playboy of a husband does not diddle around while I am away." Lifting baby Ganesha into her arms, she said, "I'll take you with me, for I know he makes just as much fun of your elephant head as he does of my dark complexion." At that, she hurried on her way. Halfway down the mountain she came upon her aunt, the old mountain giantess Kasuma Modini, and told her everything that had happened. They gossiped until the rocks started sweating and then, just before going on, she asked her aunt to throw an eye on Mount Kailash once in a while, to see if her husband was carrying on with another woman. Finally, after a journey of many days, Parvati found a hidden forest suited for meditation. She dressed in bark cloth and fasted. In the summer, she sat between 4 fires in the scorching sun and, in the winter, she stood in icy cold mountain streams. In the meantime, Adi, a wicked demon, had found out that Parvati was out of the house. He saw it as a unique opportunity to avenge his father, Andhaka, whom Shiva had slain. Adi was not afraid of Shiva, for Brahma's boon had made him invincible, that is, as long as he stayed in his proper form. But already in order to sneak past Nandi the watchful gatekeeper, he'd had to turn himself into a snake. Then, again using the power of illusion, he took on the appearance of Parvati. Every hair, every paw, every curve, every smile, the tinkle in her voice and the twinkle in her eyes were exactly copied. The only difference was that this false Parvati had teeth hidden in her vagina. Smiling sweetly, she approached Shiva. "Darling, don't be upset that I went away angry. I have forgiven and forgotten your insult. Now I long for your kisses." Icon of Uma Shankar as half woman, half man. Though she was Parvati's splitting image, Shiva became somewhat suspicious, for he knew that once Parvati's mind was made up on a plan, she was bound and determined to carry it out. Again he scrutinized her carefully, investigating every detail. No doubt, this was Parvati. But suddenly he noticed a tiny hair out of place and, seeing through the illusion, recognized the dangerous demon in front of him. Might as well turn the demon's destruction into sport, he thought, as he strapped a thunderbolt onto his penis. Then he jumped on the false Parvati and bore into her so that the monster died, screaming. Unfortunately, Just at that moment, Parvati's old, gossipy aunt passed by Mount Kailash. Thinking she had caught Shiva carrying on with a strange woman, she turned herself into a breeze of air and flew straight to the grove where her niece was doing penance. Parvati was as hurt as any woman can be when a husband is unfaithful. She cursed Nandi, who had failed to guard the door as he should have. May he turn into a heartless, cold stone for not obeying me. Her fierce anger, energized by the rigorous ascetic exercises she had done, sprang out of her in the form of a fiery lion. She was just about to plunge herself into its roaring jaws in order to commit suicide as she had done when she was Umasati, but grandfather Brahma, her guru, stopped her. He told her not to be rash and act foolish. Knowing that it is a grave sin not to obey one's honored spiritual teacher, she just stood there, trembling. Now Lord Brahma granted her a boon. The darkness left her body and took on an independent form, that of Kali. And Parvati shone with the light, golden complexion of the rising full moon. Thus she received her new name, Gauri, the brilliantly shining, or golden, one. Before giving his student her final blessing, Brahma reassured her, "My child, you and your husband shall be so close that you will melt into each other, becoming one person, known as Ardhanarishwara, or Uma Shankar." The mighty lion, born of her rage, became her mount, on which she would ride out against demons anywhere in the world. All her wishes having been fulfilled, the goddess, Gauri, hurried back to Mount Kailash. Just as she was about to enter the portals of her home, Nandi, who did not recognize the transformed goddess, lowered his horns, blocking her path. "Be gone, strange woman," he bellowed. "No one may enter, but Parvati, our dear mother." A wicked demon, taking on her appearance, stealthily wormed his way past me. After my lord killed the intruder, he ordered me to let absolutely no woman pass this threshold. At these words, Parvati's heart melted, and she realized that her aunt had not observed correctly. Now she was sorry to have cursed Nandi to become a silent stone. But the white bull, who finally recognized her, said, "Dear mother, even your curse is a blessing. I won't mind becoming a stone." Ever since, one sees a stone Nandi in front of every Shiva temple. Some say that Nandi was actually born the son of a woman named Stone and spent a lifetime serving Shiva in human form. Durga, like Shiva himself, his Shaktis have light and dark sides. They can take on gentle or fierce appearances. In her manifestation as Durga, the inaccessible, the goddess partakes of both. Noble Durga is neither the gentle mother and wife, like Parvati, nor is she the terrible, violent ogress like Kali, rather she is a sovereign, independent Amazon. As is the Greek Athena, who sprung fully armed from the forehead of Zeus, and the Valkyries, the shield maidens of Odin, she is a warrior. As Sinhavahini, the lion rider, she is associated, like Kaibal, Freya, and other ancient goddesses, with predatory cats. Like a cat, she hunts her prey, the demons of hate, vanity, and egoism. She is the nemesis of all those who violate dharma. The warrior goddess received her name from one of her victims, an asura named Durga. Because of his pitiless self-torture, this asura had gained so much power that he could drive the gods from their thrones. The Puranas tell that Durga on her lion. The celestials were reduced to homeless beggars, dressed in rags, picking through the garbage to survive. Demonic Durga forbade the worship of the gods, for only he was to be worshipped. Temples were set up in his honor. Soon chaos spread throughout society and throughout nature, for the Brahmins were afraid to recite the holy mantras from the Vedas. Not satisfied with how the world had been created, the mighty Asura changed the weather patterns, drained swamps, leveled mountains, and rechanneled the rivers. The stars could no longer be seen as the sky was filled with dust and smoke. The seasons became irregular so that there were fruits and flowers in the winter. Nonetheless, earth brought forth record harvests, mountains of grain and butter, but only because she was afraid of the mighty demon Durga. The increasingly loud anguished cries of the maltreated animals, the overworked human beings, and the fearful gods finally rose to Mount Kailash and woke Shiva from his meditation. As he enjoyed resting in his bliss, he turned the task over to the goddess. She mounted her lion and rode against the Asura, who countered by sending tens of thousands of snorting giants to meet her. Their monster arms ripped out mountains and tall trees with which they wanted to bludgeon her. At that, she split the ogress Kalaratri, Black Knight, from her being. Kalaratri's breath was so hot that it burned the monsters to ashes. New fiends appeared, as thick as hail, and pounded upon the goddess on the lion. Shakti destroyed them all and then went after the Asura king, Durga, himself. Using his power of illusion, he constantly changed his appearance. He turned into a huge buffalo, then he became smaller than a fly, only to change into an elephant bigger than a mountain, but each time, she thwarted him. Finally she killed him, in his original form of a 1,000-armed giant. In memory of this brilliant victory, Parvati takes on the name Durga whenever she goes to battle riding her lion. The Vamana Purana tells of Durga's greatest battle. It tells how she freed the black buffalo demon, the king of the Asuras, Mahisha, from his evil karma by dispatching him. No Asura had ever been as powerful as Mahisha. Not only had he enslaved the three worlds, but no god, even among the great gods, could undo him. When the divinities met to deliberate, the terrible anger flashing out of their eyes met in midair, forming a fiery focal point, causing a giant conflagration in the midst of which arose a virgin shining brighter than all the heavens. She had 3 eyes, dark, flowing hair, and 18 arms that whirled like the spokes of a rapidly revolving wheel. In each one of her hands she held a weapon, or a lordly insignia, of one of the anguished gods. She held Shiva's trident, Vishnu's discus, Brahma's beads and water pot, Varuna's noose, Agni's lance, the wind god Vayu's bow, the sun god Surya's quiver of arrows, and Indra's thunderbolt. Kubera, the god of the underworld, provided her with a heavy metal club. Yama, the god of the dead, gave her his sword and shield. Vishwakarman, the divine architect, handed her his battle axe. On and on, the gods bestowed all their powers upon her. Armed in this way, she knocked the Asura down and, standing on his back, cut off his head with her sword. Durga's victory over the buffalo demon is a favorite icon for all those who need to seek strength and energy, such as truck drivers and soldiers. She is depicted as a radiant maiden sitting astride a lion whose fangs and claws are sunk into a bleeding buffalo bull. One hand grasps the severed head of her adversary by its scalp, while the other hands hold the weapons and insignias of the gods. All the while, her face is calm and gentle, as if nothing out of the ordinary were happening. She is the peaceful eye in the middle of the storm. The chaos and destruction surrounding her seem to be of no interest to her. Once upon a time, somewhere toward the end of the last world age, the Dwapara Yuga, 2 asuras named Sumbha and Nisumha, incarnations of extremely sophisticated egoism, gained power. The Markandeya Purana tells how they submitted to 10,000 years of the most horrid self-castigation, hanging upside down over fires, holding up their arms until they resembled withered birds' claws, lying on beds of nails or hot coals, and completing all the martyrdoms one still occasionally sees being performed by fakirs and ascetics on the banks of the Ganges or in the Himalayas. Apsara, a heavenly dancer. The gods trembled at their implacable determination. In order to hinder these asuras, they sent the love god, Kama, and two of the most bewitching damsels of heaven to distract the penitents. Kama's flower arrows hit their mark. As Sumbha and Nisumbha looked up, the seductive image of the voluptuous, dancing Apsarasas burned itself into them. Momentarily, they forgot themselves and were filled with desire. After some 5,000 years of carnal pleasure, however, they regained their senses, realizing that they were about to be cheated of the fruits of their suffering. Enraged, they drove the lovely Apsarasas from their forest lodgings and continued their self-martyrdom more determinedly. Slowly, piece by piece, they cut strips of flesh from their bones and sacrificed it to Shiva. For 1,000 years they did this, until they were but bleached skeletons. Everything they possessed, they sacrificed to Shiva, everything save their pride. With extreme devotion, they forced Mahadev to descend personally from his throne and listen to their pleas. They felt they had gained enough merits to warrant immortality. But Shiva explained to them that only if they could bring their last sacrifice, that is, letting go of their egotistic pride, could their wish be fulfilled. Then, they would merge with his being and attain immortality. But being demons, they were not capable of abandoning themselves fully to the Lord, so they had to settle for lordship over the entire universe. Their boon having been granted, they immediately cast the gods into the dust, for nothing was allowed to shine except they themselves. Their arrogance became so unbearable that even Brahma and Vishnu could stand it no longer. The Creator and the Upholder hastened to Mount Kailash to voice their concern. When Mahadev finally rose out of his trance and listened to them, he had to explain that nothing could be done, for the accumulated merits of Sumbhas and Nisumbhas' sufferings permitted them to continue wielding power. He was not going to interfere. Before fading into bliss again, he told them they might try talking with Durga. Perhaps, if all the suffering creatures prayed to her, she would do something. As one might expect, the Mother of the Universe had compassion with her offspring. Taking the form of a simple country girl, she walked through the mountain valleys, carrying a water jug on her head. No sooner had she appeared than the spies, who served as the eyes of the demon lords throughout the world, sighted her. As she was beautiful without measure and apparently innocent and unspoiled to boot, they quickly gave report to their masters, hoping to be rewarded for finding such a delightful morsel, which promised to satisfy the debauched lusts of their lords. The Asuras sent messengers to the maiden, inviting her with flattering words to the palace, where the jewels and fineries of the world would be laid at her feet. The maiden merely laughed a cheerful laugh at this offer and told them, much like proud Brunhilde of the Nibelungen saga, whoever wants to have me, must first defeat me in battle. The messengers became piqued at her haughty answer. Don't you know, young lady, with whom you are dealing? She only continued laughing and went merrily on her way. Sumbha was infuriated when he heard what had happened. It was time to teach that wench some manners and respect. He ordered one of his captains to go and simply seize her. When the captain and his henchmen were about to lay hands on her, the tender maid roared like a lion so that their eardrums broke and their bones shattered. Only a handful of those who had not come so close managed to escape and tell their lords what had happened. Now the Asuras sent out a large troop to catch her and put her in chains. She met them sitting on a donkey, laughing. As they were about to bind her, she suddenly turned into a raging beast that pounced upon the warriors and devoured them, like a monkey devours ripe mangoes. Gleefully, she sliced off the head of the commander and drank his blood, from which she became so drunk that her eyes started glowing madly. Now a general alarm was sounded. Huge armies of Rakshas, Asuras, giants, and other allies were drummed up and set in motion. The Titanic empire resembled a stirred-up anthill. They surrounded the goddess, who was now seated on her lion, and launched an attack from all sides simultaneously. She killed them all with ease until the only one that was left was the supreme commander, Raktavijas, a master of black magic. He challenged her to a duel. Immediately, he fell under the pranks of her lion and bled from 1,000 wounds. He should have died instantly, but lo and behold, each drop of his blood turned into a new demon, as large and as strong as Raktavijas. The gods, watching from afar, shook like aspens in a storm, for they were sure that this would be Durga's end. By now, the goddess was raging. Her anger leaped out of her in the form of a heinous black fury who is called Chandi Kali. She was made of the same poison that had discolored Shiva's neck. Lusting for blood, she pounced upon the wounded demons and sucked them dry. She lapped up every drop of blood that sprayed before it hit the ground and turned into another demon. Finally, after having dispatched the black magician, Durga killed the Asura kings, Sumbha and Nisumha, while another aspect of her, Black Kali, ate the corpses that littered the battlefield, ripping them like a jackal. Radiant in victory, Durga rose back into the highest heaven while the universe sang her praises. Kali-black goddesses, mistresses of the night, the earth, and the dark of the moon, have been honored throughout history all over the world. In the Occident, they survived into Christianity as the Black Madonna, worshipped from Spain to Russia. The Black Madonna of Częstochowa, the patroness of the Polish people, is the best known. In modern secular culture, her archetype seems to shimmer through the image of the matter-devouring black holes, which astrophysicists have discovered in outer space, or, on a more mundane level, in the black-clad femmes fatales such as pop singers like Madonna. However she appears, she is an expression of the dark, fertile, unknowable abyss of being out of which all is born and into which all is again reabsorbed. None of the black goddesses, however, is as terror-inspiring as Kali, Shiva's most awesome Shakti. Kali Ma, the Black Mother, is bloodthirsty and cruel like a man-eating tigress. She is time Kala, that mercilessly devours everything that dared manifest itself in the world of existence. She absorbs all, destroys all. For is it not true that every moment is immediately destroyed by time? Every present becomes in an instant the past. Her ravishing hunger devours each second. Who can withstand her? Truly, she is sheerest evil for the ego, that sense of personal identity that longs to build itself a monument, give itself some hold, some sort of permanence. Kali. How desperately humanity has tried to escape her clutches. Egyptians mummified their bodies, alchemists searched tirelessly for the elixir of life, Hernando de Soto looked for the fountain of eternal youth in far-off Florida. And even now, laboratory chemists are trying to synthesize the pill that would extend life indefinitely, while genetechnologists place their hopes in the miracle of genetic engineering. In California, those who can afford it let themselves be quick frozen in dry ice at the moment of death, in the hope that future scientists will be able to raise them from the dead. Others place their hope for personal continuance in sperm and ovum banks. In every case, it is the ego that wants to remain, that struggles heroically against all odds. Yet the struggle is hopeless. Like a vampire, Black Kali sucks life's blood and devours the corpses. A common icon shows Kali drunk on blood and gore, dancing madly in the midst of a battle and doomsday fire over the bodies of the slain. There is no one to stop her. Even Shiva lies as a pale, bloodless corpse under her feet. With one of her forearms she is swinging the severed head of her opponent, and another hand is twirling a blood-stained scimitar. With one of her forearms she is swinging the severed head of her opponent, and another hand is twirling a blood-stained scimitar. Except for a girdle of hacked-off arms, a necklace of 50 skulls, and earrings made from the corpses of children, she is stark naked. Wild, disheveled hair swirls around her head, while her three bulging, bloodshot eyes roll about in lunatic frenzy. A long, lolling red tongue, eager to lap up blood, hangs down her chin. For the ethnocentric Westerner, Kali and her cult, including the sacrificing of buffalo bulls and billy goats, remain an abomination. British imperialists found in the colorful excesses of Kali worship welcome proof of their own moral and spiritual superiority. That focus provided a ready pretext for ignoring their own dubious role in the exploitation of an entire subcontinent, under the guise of the civilizing mission of the white man. But the Swamis raise an admonishing finger, not to be too hasty in judgment. Is the image of a maltreated dead man, nailed upon a cross, not equally gruesome, and yet, the signpost of one of the most sublime spiritual mysteries? It is the nature of such symbolism to transcend common reason and sense. Kali stands for the dark mystery out of which all arises and into which it disappears again. The ego, bound and limited by reason and the five senses, is in no position to be the judge. In a deeper sense, Kali is the loving mother, who, through the power of time, graciously destroys the monstrous ego illusion. Fear not. She gestures with her right hand as she blesses her devotees with the Abhay Mudra, while her other hand, extended in the Varada Mudra, indicates the fulfillment of one's true wishes. Chamunda, one of Kali's many forms. According to Swami Harshananda of the Sri Ramakrishna Ashram in Bangalore, the 50 skulls of Kali's necklace are the 50 sounds of language, which cause the ether to vibrate and through which the entire universe will remanifest. 3 Nothing is lost. The destruction is but making the way for constant recreation. The severed arms dangling from her belt stand for the selfless, and, hence, karma-less, deeds we have dedicated to the goddess. The loose, wild hair is expression of her unfettered freedom. Shiva, the core of being, is clothed in his Shakti, which emanates from him, but there is nothing that can cover Shakti, therefore, she is shown completely naked, Digambara, and black. Naturally, not everybody interprets the icon of Kali in such a sublimated manner. Bengalis and Nepalese peasants celebrate the Black Mother in a much more concrete way. They satisfy her bloodlust by sacrificing black billy goats or water buffalo bulls in front of her idol. The devotion shown during such ceremonies stands in stark contrast to the efficient butchery at our Western meat factories. As the earth drinks the blood, she will bring forth rich harvests. The association of blood sacrifice and soil fertility is anthropologically common enough that it needs no further comment. Since there is no resisting the power of such a goddess, one can but submit to her will and soothe her with sacrifices. In the Kalika Purana, Shiva tells his sons, the Bhairavas, that Mother Kali can be pleased for 500 years with the blood of a gazelle or of a rhinoceros, but the blood of a human being satisfies her for 1,000 years. Calcutta, the city of Kali, in the heart of Bengal, appears to the Western visitor as strange as the goddess herself. No one remains neutral about it, one loves it or one is appalled by it. In the midst of a slum, crowded with homeless Hindu refugees from Muslim persecution in Bangladesh, Kali has her main temple. There, sensation-seeking tourists who dare run the gauntlet of cripples, beggars, and thieves, may witness one of these animal sacrifices. This is the neighborhood where the white-robed nuns of Mother Teresa swarm out like vultures, collecting the dying and destitute. For many Bengalis, there was little doubt that the old nun, dressed in a white sari, white, as the color of death in Asia, was none other than the goddess herself, for who else would care so much for the dead? With Sri Ramakrishna 1834–1886, the Bengali saint who started as a temple servant at Kali's temple in Calcutta, the cult of the Black Mother reached new ethical heights. He honored every woman as Kali. In contrast, there are occultists for whom Kali worship has degenerated into pure black magic. As they slash the sacrificial animal, they call out the enemy's name, assuming that he'll die in the same manner. Murderers and criminals, like the thugs, often dedicate their atrocities to the wild goddess. The thugs, also fansigas equals stranglers, were ordinary peasants who belonged to a secret endogamous society that worshipped Bhovani Kali by periodically going on expeditions during which they joined pilgrims and travelers, whom they strangled and robbed, when Kali provided them with favorable omens. Strict ritual and taboo regulated the undertakings of these were tigers of Kali. The thugs trace their origin back to Kali's battle with the demon Raktavijas, whose every drop of blood turned into a new monster. When Kali got tired of licking up so much blood, she made two men out of the sweat of her arms. She gave them knotted handkerchiefs and told them to continue killing the demons she pointed out to them, by strangling them and not shedding any blood. The cult of the stranglers seems to be old indeed. Already the carvings in the Ellora caves show thugs doing their work, and old Persian legends tell of them. Villages tolerated them, while some Maharajas even taxed their loot. They carried on undisturbed until a clever British officer, William Sleeman, uncovered their activities and brought many hundreds to the gallows. The thugs themselves believed that Kali was punishing them for having abandoned their dharma by wantonly killing holy men, women, and a certain class of merchants that the goddess had tabooed. Sleeman was quite surprised to find out that most of the thugs were formerly Muslims. When asked how they could worship a Hindu goddess, they told him that Kali was none other than Fatima, Muhammad's daughter, another example of Indian syncretism. Ever since the partition of India in 1947, there have been isolated rumors of a revival of the Thuggis. The dacoits, armed gangs of peasants who plunder trains and the villas of the rich and ambush the police, operate also under the auspices of Kali. The female dacoit leader, Phulan Devi, who terrorized the wild hinterlands of Uttar Pradesh during the late 1970s and early 80s, was worshipped by the local peasantry as an expression of the goddess. For several years, they hid the dacoit queen, and fed her and her gang, making it impossible for the 4,000-man security force to apprehend her. Kali dancing on Shiva's corpse. The most common iconographical representation of the uncanny goddess shows her in frenzied dance on Shiva's lifeless, bleached body. The interpretation generally forwarded by Hindus is that Kali, inebriated from the blood she drank, was dancing her victory dance. Her gyrations were so wild that the earth threatened to come unhinged. In order to bring her back to her senses, Shiva laid himself under her feet. Being a normal Hindu woman, she was thunderstruck with shame when she saw her husband at her feet, for a woman's place is at the feet of her husband, not vice versa. Feeling ashamed, she stuck out her tongue. Historians of culture venture another interpretation. The icon represents the final victory of the indigenous Black Mother goddess of the originally matriarchal Dravidian cultures, over the male pantheon of the white, Aryan invaders. But there is another interpretation possible. Though he looks lifeless, Shiva, the archetypal shaman, is in a state of deep trance samadhi. His anima has left its physical body in the form of Kali in order to accomplish wonderful, world-saving deeds in the supersensible world of gods, demons, and spirits. At the same time, the icon makes some of the basic tenets of Hinduism visible. It shows Shiva as the unmoved ground of being, upon which the ever-changing, shimmering, endlessly varied play of divine energy Shakti unfolds. Shiva is the resting pole around which Kali dances the dance of elusive existence. Annapurna, like many of his devotees, Shiva lives as a beggar on earth. His daily round of begging keeps his poor family alive. Often, however, he cannot even get that together, for he is given to smoking hemp or eating bham, which helps him forget his earthly misery. Whatever meager crumbs or few grains of rice that might be left from the day before are usually eaten by Ganesha's rat or Kartikeya's peacock. Often Parvati and the children must go hungry, as in the following common folkloric story, which was related to me by a sadhu. One day, Narada, the roguish messenger of the gods, came by the hovel they called home. Shaking his head in feigned indignation, he teased the poor woman. Yes, indeed, your old man is a bhola fool. He smokes dope while his wife and children are starving. That was more than Parvati's pride could bear. Taking Ganesha on her arm and leading little Kartikeya by the hand, she decided to go and do the begging herself. After a few hours, having sobered up a bit, Shiva finally started his rounds, only to find his pleas unheeded and the doors slammed in his face. How could he have known that his wife had been everywhere before him? Utterly disappointed and close to tears, he came home with an empty begging bowl. Parvati, however, met him on the doorstep with a full bowl of rice and started to feed him with a spoon. Ever since, this manifestation of the goddess became known as Annapurna, she who is rich in food. Shiva was so overjoyed at her kindness that he hugged her, pressing her so hard to his side that they melded together to form one being. In this half Malay, half female form, they are known as Ardhanarishwara. Annapurna feeding Shiva, 19th century. There is another version of the story. 5. One day Shiva lectured his wife, the world is an illusion. Nature is an illusion. Even food is just Maya. That was too much for Parvati to bear. After all, she is the mother of all material things, including food. All right, she shouted as she walked out the door, if you think I am just an illusion, let's see how you and the rest of the world get along without me. Her departure caused havoc in the universe. Time stood still. The seasons did not change, the earth became barren. There was no food to be found in all the three worlds. Gods, demons, animals, humans hungered and cried like children who had lost their mother. Even the sages cried, salvation makes no sense to an empty stomach. News reached Shiva that Parvati had reappeared in Banaras and set up a kitchen for hungry pilgrims. He ran there as fast as he could, and joined the endless line of hungry creatures waiting for alms. As he held up his begging bowl in front of her, he said, now I realize that the material world, like the spirit, cannot be dismissed as an illusion. Parvati smiled and fed him with her own hands. Annapurna, the goddess of food. In Varanasi, the city of beggars and saints, Annapurna has a famous temple. The kind goddess is shown as a light-skinned matron holding a bowl of rice and a serving spoon. Anyone who worships her, as Shiva did, will never have to go hungry. It is said that because of her constant presence in the holy city, no one has ever starved in Varanasi. She herself will not eat unless everybody else has been fed. Annapurna seems to be an ancient Indo-European goddess. The Romans worshipped an Annapurna, whose feast they celebrated in springtime with wine-drinking excursions into the countryside. Legend tells of the time when the plebeians battled with the patricians and the Romans had to flee to the surrounding hills. They were about to die of hunger when suddenly the goddess appeared and fed them cakes she had baked. Ganga. The Indo-Europeans of the days of yore experienced all rivers as female divinities. In India this is still so. For the Hindus, Mother Ganges, or Ganga Ma, as they lovingly call her, is the purest and most heavenly of all river goddesses. Like Parvati, her younger sister, she is the daughter of the king of the mountains. Stories tell that after Sati had immolated herself in the fire and was about to be reborn to the mountain lord and his wife, she split herself into two persons, Ganga and Parvati, both of whom were married to Shiva. In some Bengali accounts, Ganga is even made out to be the first wife of Shiva. He has to sneak out of the house at night to meet with his dark lover, Parvati, in the garden. In any case, both goddesses play the role of a mother for Shiva's son, Kartikeya. In many popular folktales, the beautiful river goddess appears as Parvati's rival. Parvati is so jealous that she heaps abuses upon her, calling her a harlot and cursing her to be born as a Chandali, an untouchable prostitute, a status equal to that of a dog or a pig. But Ganga pays her back often enough. She washes away the sand lingams Parvati builds or even tries to sweep her sister away in her floods. Once, in the beginning of time, Ganga, a proud, independent maiden, frolicked in the wide, flowering fields of heaven. She had no desire to go down to earth. Indeed, she was vehemently opposed to the idea. How the meditation of a saint brought her down will be told in the following story, which is related in the Ramayana and frequently told as part of the oral tradition. Sagara was an ancient king who had two queens. One queen bore him a son and the other queen bore him a god, which contained 60,000 seeds, which, after they had been placed in milk, also turned into sons. One day, in order to thank the gods for all the boons he had received and also to increase his realm even further, the king decided to stage a great horse sacrifice. Such an Ashwamedha was by no means a simple affair. The stallion chosen was allowed to roam where it pleased for a span of 1 year. Armed nobles and princes had to follow it to make sure it was not lost or, even worse, abducted by another king. In the latter case, it meant war. The loss of a consecrated horse was an omen of the greatest misfortune. Sagara's 60,000 sons took it upon themselves to follow the sacred horse. However, despite their vigilance, the unthinkable happened. The horse disappeared without a trace. Indra, fearing the impeccable king might become too powerful, had abducted the animal and hid it in the deepest region of the underworld Patala. The thunder god knew that a monarch who succeeds in completing 100 such sacrifices would automatically become the next Indra, the next king of the heavens. The 60,000 princes had no choice but to search all worlds to find the stallion. They combed all lands, searched the wide seas, and climbed all mountains. It was of no avail. Finally, they started digging deep into the earth, down to the mighty elephants that hold it up. Disturbed, the elephants shifted weight, causing the earth to tremble and quake. This, in turn, bothered the rishis and the gods, making them very angry. At long last, the searchers reached Patala, deep, deep under the earth, and saw their horse grazing peacefully next to a meditating sage. Wasting no thought, they took him for the culprit who had abducted their animal and rudely roused him from his contemplations, threatening him with their weapons. "Hand over our horse, you thief." They should have known better. One simply does not get away with disturbing a meditant. His anger took the form of a ball of fire that shot like lightning from his forehead and burned all 60,000 to ashes on the spot. King Sagara waited for many years, but his sons did not return. Nobody knew what had happened to them. However, the ritual, once begun, had to be completed, for it amounted to a promise made to the gods, and, if word is not kept, the consequences are unspeakable. Thus, the king sent out his last son to find both the horse and his brothers. For many years he searched and searched. In the meantime, old King Sagara died. Finally, the son died also, and the grandson continued the nearly hopeless search. But being keen of senses, he picked up the trail of his 60,000 uncles into the underworld. At long last he reached Patala, where he came upon the old, meditating rishi and the consecrated horse peacefully grazing next to him. Being more polite than his predecessors, he waited and did not speak until the holy man addressed him first and revealed to him the fate of his uncles. They were rude and deserved their fate. Now, they are bound in hell. Great Rishi, the young man asked carefully, is there no way to save them? For how shall the ancestors gain peace if there are no grandsons to sacrifice and pray for them? There is only one way. If heavenly Ganga can be made to flow from heaven into hell and wet the ashes and bones, then only will they be cleansed from their sin and may go to heaven. Then, gruffly, as is the manner of rishis, he told him, now, take the horse, and be gone. To bring the river of heaven down to the lower world would not be easy. It would take more years of strict penance than were left in the young king's life. Only his noble son Bhagirath, Sagara's great-grandson, had the ability, purity, and will to undertake this difficult task. He traded the palace for the wilderness, his silks for bark cloth, and he meditated for 10,000 years without losing concentration until Brahma appeared, asking him which boon he desired. When Lord Brahma heard his wish, he sadly shook his head and told him, what you desire is impossible. The earth could not bear the impact of that mighty stream cascading down upon her. Only if Shiva were willing to break her fall by letting her flow through his hair, might it be possible. Shiva catching Ganga in his dreadlocks. Bhagiratha's filial piety and devotion to dharma left him no choice. For another 10,000 years he centered his mind on the god with the matted hair, while performing the most difficult ascetic exercises. Finally Shiva appeared to him and promised to help. Ganga, the proud maiden, was in no way pleased to trade the pleasures of heaven for a journey to the underworld. But the power of the Saja's austerities left her no choice. Sullenly, she looked down upon Shiva, who was ready to catch her in his mountain of matted, tangled curls. I shall wash him away, she thought to herself gleefully. But Shiva read her thoughts. He caught her in his felted hair, like a fish in a net, and held the struggling maiden there for another 10,000 years, in order to dampen her pride. Bhagiratha nearly despaired. Finally, Shiva loosened but a single hair and she came rushing down his head and down the mountainsides as the 7 main rivers of earth. Since that day, Shiva became also known as Gangadhara, carrier of Ganga, and the river is lauded as Harashekhara, Shiva's crown. The young river flooded the once dry plains. Wherever she passed, the land greened and blossomed. Happiness spread among humankind and the beasts. Rippling, splashing, gurgling, clapping her wave hands, she followed the sage Bhagiratha, who was guiding her way to the underworld, where the bones of his fallen ancestors awaited her reviving touch. Ganga and dreadlocks, attributes of Shiva. Then, an incident occurred that almost doomed Bhagiratha's effort. In her careless passing, Ganga's singing and splashing disturbed the meditations of the powerful rishi, Janu. Using his unspent ascetic power, he simply drank her up, swallowing the entire river, and returned to his contemplations. All creatures, great and small, but, above all, Bhagirath, pleaded that he release her again. Finally, moved out of respect for Bhagirath's penance, he let her spurt out of his ear. Her sojourn through the rishi made her even purer than she had been before. Finally, her waters reached the enormous pit that Sagara's 60,000 sons had dug and filled it with her flood. It became the ocean. On and on she flowed until, at long last, she reached the underworld where her mere touch brought the dead back to life.